In this video, we're going to look at just creating a natural balance with our recorded tracks. We've got our samples done in the last video. So we've got all our tracks in there now ready. Everything is edited. Everything is the best it's going to be in terms of a take. So the idea here is that we'll just use some EQ and compression further to what we did in the signal path video, but this time it will be in Pro Tools so that we can get a nice natural balance across for us to build up the rest of the song.
Now, I'll start with the bass drum here. So what you'll see at the top, I've got this plugin here, which is a Pro Expander. So this is basically a noise gate. Now, any noise that you might get, like snare drums coming through the kick drum microphones, obviously we had the duvet on to try and combat anything like that. You always do get some that comes through still. So this just helps clean that up. So if we turn that off, you can hear a little bit of cymbal in the background. You hear quite a lot of snare drum. Having that on just minimises, and that's the idea with a noise gate. What we've got down below is this. This is the Waves SSL channel strip. This is one of my favourite plugins, and the reason for it is it's designed just like an analog channel strip on a real desk. These plugins have been modelled from original hardware, so that's why it looks the way it does. So you've got your EQ down in this section. You've got a high and low pass filter here, and then you've got a compressor and a gate. We're not using the gate in this scenario, but I usually just add a little bit of compression to smooth out some of the hits. I like to add a lot of top end, around 8K, and I like to scoop out some of the mids, the low mids again. It's probably around 300 or 400, yeah, 390 hertz we're cutting out there. And that just helps give that kick. It's a similar EQ move to what we did on the Neve on the way in. But it just helps it cut through, a little bit more processed. We're using a tiny amount of compression here, but then you'll see on my routing we're going through this auxiliary track here, which then goes to another EQ, which is the same as the one we were using when we were recording, and we're doing similar EQ moves again. We're cutting out the low mids around 360 on this, and we're adding some high end. And secondly to that, we've got a compressor at the end, which again, similar to the compressor that is in the SSL plugin, we're using a little bit of it to help create an overall smoother sounding track. Now what you'll also see, we've got three kick sounds now. So we've got the kick out mic and the kick sample. So the kick out mic is processed in a similar way. I'm adding a little bit more 3K on this, which is on this green one here. But these are all going to that same Neve EQ here, and then to that compressor, and they're all being tracked the same. So I've obviously got the sample, and I think we're using the same as what I've got on the kick in. Yeah, we are. So that's those three blended, which go to these channels here, and that's the kick sound. Now for the snare, we're using this EQ, and now this is more of what I would call a surgical EQ. FabFilter makes some great plugins. There are similar alternatives available in some different DAWs, but this one is one of my favorites because you can isolate the frequency and you can listen just to that frequency on its own. So particularly around 519 hertz, there was a little bit of a ring on the snare drum that was just a little bit off-putting. So that's what I've done, just to cut that out there. Rolling off some low end, rolling off some high end, and we're boosting a little bit around 6.5K. And then again, to finish it off, we're just using some SSL EQ again, channel strip, sorry, where we're cutting out some 800 hertz. We're boosting some 200 to give it some low end, but overall we're boosting around 5K, quite a lot on there. We're rolling off high end again. No compression on this particular track at the moment. Again, these are all just to kind of get a rough volume for as we're going. It doesn't have to be a finished mix at this point, because once you start adding in guitars and bass and vocals, things will naturally change anyway. So on the snare bottom mic, we're adding some 5K, we're rolling off some highs, rolling off some lows, and we've also got a little bit more compression again. Again, similar to the snare top microphone, the sample I used had a couple of little notes in there that were just poking through a little too much for me, so I've used the FabFilter Pro Q3 again just to try and tame those. So again, like the kick drum, I've got the snare drum going to its own track, and again treating it in a similar way using the Neve style EQ again, as well as the 1176 compressor. And just by having a little bit here and there, whether it's EQ or compression, I feel like a little bit used in a subtle way goes a longer way to getting an overall tighter sound. Now the hi-hat is really straightforward. It's just, we've got the gate on this. This is just the hi-hat preset. The only change I've made to it is I took off some of the 10K because it was a little bit harsh sounding, and it was also quite compressed. So I've turned off the compression. So we've just got EQ on the hi-hats. Now the toms, again, we're rolling off highs, a little bit of 200 hertz, similar I think on the floor tom as well, slightly higher, and then we're using the SSL again just to boost some highs, tiny bit of compression, and that's pretty much the same on both toms. The ride cymbal again is just a ride, it's a hi-hat preset again, sorry, just trying to keep those two consistent with each other for the time being. Again, that could change later down the line as we get further into tracking. And then on the overheads, we're doing a few little surgical cuts with the fab filter, nothing too crazy and nothing that we can't undo. Like, all of this can be undone if we wanted to turn every plugin off. We could completely start again if we wanted to. And then again, we're adding some 10K and a few sort of similar cuts like what we did on the bass drum. Again, it's quite a quick video of how that goes through because there's a lot of information in there to take into consideration. But again, these can change. Nothing is set in stone. The beauty of recording this way is we've got the raw takes. We can treat them as we want to. We could add 10 more samples to everything if we wanted to, but as we are at the moment, I think everything is sounding quite good. The only other thing we have got going on is all these drums are routed to this one channel here. So that works as an overall drum volume. But what I've also got is this one here, which is called Drum Crush. Now that's slightly different. So that's just got the close mics. So what I mean by the close mics is the kick, snare and the two toms. They're all being routed to this track separately. And when we play that on its own, we've got this SSL style compressor, which is absolutely hammering it in compression. Now the idea behind that is the original SSL recording consoles had this style compressor built into the desk, and then at some point it was normally used for talkback. So if your producer or engineer was talking to your client, they would press a button and it would go through this compressor so that everyone who was recording with headphones could hear it. But at some point engineers realised that sounded great if you were to put music through there as well. So we're just using this Drum Crush preset, but that creates, just on the close mics, this nice punchy overall tone, which when you blend in with the rest of the drums, and if we take that away, we'll bring it back in, it just adds a nice overall fatness to the sound. It keeps everything a little bit more consistent, and overall does quite a good job.
Thanks for watching these videos. I hope you found them useful, informative. I hope that there's, even if it's just one or two sort of ideas you can take away and use on future recordings, I hope that there is something there for you. There's a lot of information covered in these videos and there's a lot more detail that we could go into. But if nothing else, I hope this has been a nice brief overview of the whole process, some of the things that are involved, some of the microphones we use, and a few sort of mixing ideas, and maybe in terms of remiking, things that have not been thought of in the past. Okay, so I've been Matt Cade. Hopefully this has been good. Thanks for watching.